Coxhoe Hall. Here was it from 1725 until 1952. Already on that place, around 1300, there was the Blackerson family having something built, but that was in ruin in 1418. And then it belonged to the Canners, and then in 1725 to John Burton, who demolished the Tudor house which was then here standing and built Coxhoe Hall. And when it was standing here, it was a big building. It had 2.5 stores and also quite big. And then here were extensive parks. Okay, I don't know where, but here were extensive parks, I assume here. Extensive parks and an avenue among trees leading up to the house. There could be something, I don't know. But it was then later changed to a more Gothic style, so maybe that was already then changed. There was a high decorated staircase going up somewhere. And then in the house there were also many decorated things. All the fireplaces were decorated. There was the drawing room with a Rococo style, and there were palms above a chimney place, and they were meeting from the top a female figure from the ceiling or something. I have no picture. And there were tennis courts with beautiful flowers around them. There was a terrace where a collection of Roman artifacts was. Yes, that was the most thing here. Now, then in 1806, Elizabeth Barrett Browning was born here. She was a poet. She was born into a family. Her father had 40 square kilometers of plantations in Jamaica, where slavery was done. That was a great source of the wealth of her family at that time. She advocated for the abolition of slavery, which was in 1833, which led them to that they sold their estate. I think it was that year. No, that was later. So wait, no, that was later. That is a different story. The Barrett Browning family moved from here away in 1809 when she was already 3 years old. So Elizabeth Barrett Browning was born here in 1806 and moved away in 1809. The family was here, but when later had to sell their estates, it could include that after the abolition of slavery in 1833. Elizabeth Browning had advocated for the abolition of slavery and also for laws reducing child labor and so on, and for rights of people. So she was born here, and now that house was then here, and then the next thing to that thing is that it was then sold to Mark Elliston, I think was it, or Eccleston, in 1825 something, sometime, and then 1850 to Thomas Wood, or the other way around. And he lived in there, he made a billiard room, but then it was sold on to the East Hatton Coal Company in 1938. And then it was used as barracks, then it was used during the Second World War as a prisoner of war camp for German and Italian prisoners. Then after the war it was again sold to another company, and they said it was unsafe because of subsidizes. Let's go a bit closer. And because here still a few things visible. And then there was a fire, and then it was demolished in August 1952. But this is still standing. I assume that it is that. Here's no sign, but I think it is that. So that is Coxhoe Hall. It's dirty from 1725 until 1952. And Elizabeth Browning was here born and lived the first 3 years of her life in the region. And these are the remains still standing. There's a bench. And here is that big landscape visible. And here are also public footpaths going through. It's not far from Coxhoe and so on. So people can just go here and look at the remains of Coxhoe Hall.